But Taman was thinking. The drive looked perfect. Every component was exactly where it should be. The energy flow was balanced. According to all the diagnostic screens, nothing was wrong. Yet the ship's log showed the drive randomly lost power every few days. "May I see the calculation matrices?" Taman asked. Todd Crowell frowned. "What?" "The mathematical formulas you use to regulate the energy flow. Can I see them?" Crowell exchanged glances with the other engineers. "Very well. But they are beyond your understanding." They pulled up the matrices on a large display. Taman studied them carefully. They were complex, filled with equations that would take years to fully understand. But something caught his eye. One of the constants in the formula looked wrong. "This number here," Taman pointed. "It's outdated." The Velkari engineers stared at him. "Explain," Ishara commanded. "This formula is ancient, right? Hundreds or thousands of years old?" Taman asked. Crowell nodded slowly. "Then it's based on old measurements of quantum decay rates. But those rates change over time as the universe expands. Humans discovered this 50 years ago. The rate has shifted by 0.003% since your formula was created." 0.003% is nothing, Crowell said dismissively. "In a system this size, running constantly, that tiny error compounds," Taman explained. "Every few days, the accumulated error causes a brief power fluctuation. Then the system resets and starts accumulating error again." He looked at the engineers. "You don't need to fix the drive. You need to update the math." Silence filled the bay. Then Crowell said slowly, "If you are wrong, the drive could explode." "I'm not wrong," Taman said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Ishara studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Make the change." Taman's hands shook as he input the new constant into the system. The drive hummed, flickered, and then stabilized. The blue glow became brighter, steadier. Every diagnostic screen turned green. "The efficiency has increased by 7%, one engineer reported. Astonished, Crowell stared at the displays, unable to speak. A human had solved in hours what Velkari engineers could not solve in months. Ishara's expression was unreadable. "You have completed the first task. Rest. Tomorrow brings the second." That evening, Yuna found Taman in the human cafeteria. He was eating quietly, trying to ignore the stares from other humans. Everyone had heard about his success. "One down, 2 to go," Yuna said, sitting across from him. "You might actually survive this," maybe Taman said. But he did not feel hopeful. He had gotten lucky with the drive. The next task might not be something he could solve with simple observation. The second day arrived too quickly. Taman was brought to the ship's training arena. Elite Velkari guards stood in formation, their personal shields shimmering around them. These shields could stop any known weapon in the Empire. "Your second task," Ishara announced. "Create a weapon that can pierce an elite guard's shield." Taman felt his heart sink. He was not a weapons designer. He knew nothing about military technology. This was impossible. "You have until sunset," Ishara added. "You may use any materials in the ship's storage bays." For the first 2 hours, Taman just sat in the storage area, surrounded by bins of components and materials. He had no idea where to start. The shields were too advanced. Creating a new weapon was beyond his abilities. Then he remembered something from his childhood. His grandfather had been a miner before Earth joined the Empire. He had told Taman stories about using sonic equipment to break apart rocks. Sound waves at the right frequency could shatter stone. Taman pulled up information about the shields on a data pad. They worked by creating an energy field that repelled physical and energy attacks. But what about sound? He dug deeper into the technical specifications. The shields operated at a specific frequency to maintain stability. What if he matched that frequency? He spent the next 6 hours building a crude device from mining equipment found in storage. It was ugly and makeshift, held together with magnetic clamps and spare wiring. It looked like something a child would build. When he returned to the arena at sunset, carrying his strange device, the guards laughed. "This is your weapon?" General Voss asked mockingly. "It's not a weapon exactly," Taman admitted. "It's more like a tool." He activated the device. It emitted a high-pitched whine that made everyone cover their ears. Taman aimed it at the nearest guard's shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shield began to flicker. The blue energy rippled like water. The guard looked alarmed. His shield was failing. With a final pulse, the shield collapsed entirely. The arena fell silent. Every guard stared at their companion's unprotected form. Then they looked at Temin with something approaching respect. "Explain," Ishara demanded. "The shields maintain stability at a specific frequency," Taman said, turning off the device. "I built this to emit sound waves at that exact frequency. The resonance disrupts the shield's cohesion. It's like shattering glass with a high note." "But our shields have been impenetrable for centuries," Voss protested. "How did no one think of this?" "Maybe because no one tried," Taman said simply. "You were looking for stronger weapons. I just looked for a different approach." Ishara descended from her observation platform. She walked to the guard whose shield had failed and then turned to Taman. "You have completed the second task. 2 successes." Taman allowed himself to hope. One more task, and he would live. The third day brought him to a small room containing a single object on a pedestal. It was a board game of some kind, with colored pieces arranged in a complex pattern. "This is the Puzzle of Thrones," Ishara explained. "It is a strategic game created by the first Velkhari Emperor 10,000 years ago. Only 12 individuals in our entire history have ever solved it. You have until sunset." Taman studied the board. It had multiple levels, with pieces that could move in 3 dimensions. The rules were explained on a nearby screen. They were incredibly complex, involving territory control, resource management, and tactical positioning. He sat down and began to play against the AI opponent built into the system. He lost immediately. He tried again, lost again, and again. Hours passed. He lost dozens of times. His head hurt from thinking. But slowly, he began to understand the patterns. The game reminded him of something. "It's like Boduk," he muttered to himself. Boduk, called Go in some Earth languages, was an ancient Korean strategy game. His grandfather had taught him to play as a child. The principles were different from this Velkhari game, but the underlying strategy felt similar. Territory, influence, sacrifice. He stopped trying to win by force and instead focused on subtle positioning. He gave up small victories to gain larger advantages. He let the AI think it was winning. 2 hours before sunset, something clicked in his mind. He saw the solution. 17 moves later, the board lit up green. The AI conceded defeat. The door opened. Ishara entered, followed by her commanders. They stared at the green light on the board. "Impossible," Krau whispered. "He solved it." "How?" Ishara demanded. Taman stood, exhausted. "It's similar to a human game. Once I saw the pattern, the rest followed. A human game taught you to defeat a puzzle that has stood for 10,000 years." Voss shook his head in disbelief. Taman shrugged. "Different perspectives find different solutions." Ishara looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke words that changed everything. "You have completed all 3 tasks. Your life is spared." She paused. "You will join my personal engineering staff. I wish to understand how you think." Taman should have felt relieved. He should have felt happy. But instead, he felt worried. He had survived, yes. But now, he was more visible than ever. And visibility, he was learning, could be its own kind of danger. The weeks following the trials changed Taman's life completely. He no longer lived in the cramped human quarters on the lower decks. Now he had a private room near the engineering bay, larger than any space he had occupied since leaving Earth. He no longer cleaned filters and repaired pipes. Now he worked directly under Chief Engineer Krau, solving problems across the entire ship. But the biggest change was Queen Ishara herself. She visited the engineering bay almost daily, something she had never done before. She watched Taman work, asking questions, demanding explanations. At first, this terrified him. But gradually he realized she was not looking for reasons to punish him. She was genuinely curious. One morning, Taman was working on a malfunctioning waste recycling system. It was boring work beneath someone of his new rank, but he did not mind. Problems were problems, regardless of importance. Ishara entered the bay unexpectedly. "Why are you working on waste systems?" she asked. Dotamon looked up from the disassembled unit. "Because it's broken? Your Majesty, you are a royal engineer now. Waste systems are for maintenance workers. A broken system affects everyone on the ship," Taman said, returning to his work. "Rank doesn't make the problem less real." Ishara watched him work in silence for several minutes. Then she spoke again. "You do not follow protocols. You do not consult the repair manuals. You simply begin experimenting." "Manuals are helpful," Taman agreed, pulling out a corroded component. "But they're written for normal problems. Sometimes problems are unusual. Is that how you repaired my armor?" "By ignoring proper procedures." Taman paused. They had not discussed the armor since the trials. He chose his words carefully. "I studied the armor's composition for 3 weeks before I touched it," he admitted. "I took measurements when I was cleaning it. I analyzed the metal structure in my free time." "Why?" Ishara's tone was sharp. "Why did you care about ancient armor?" "Because it was interesting," Taman said simply. "The metal composition was unlike anything I'd seen. It reminded me of ceramics mixed with metallic bonds. Very similar to materials used in ancient Earth sword making." "Swords?" Ishara seemed almost offended. "My armor is compared to primitive weapons? The Hosein dynasty swordsmiths from Korea created blades that lasted hundreds of years," Taman explained. "They used heat treatment techniques that modern metallurgy still doesn't fully understand. When I saw your armor's crack, I recognized the stress pattern. I thought those old techniques might work." He finally looked up at her. "I applied heat at precise temperatures in precise sequences, the same way my ancestors would have repaired a broken sword. It worked because the fundamental material science was the same." "Gadabala." Ishara was quiet for a long moment. "You used ancient primitive methods to repair the most advanced armor in the Empire." "Yes, and you saw nothing wrong with this approach?" Taman shook his head. "Old doesn't mean obsolete. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Modern doesn't always mean better." This answer seemed to trouble Ishara. She stood silently, her amber eyes fixed on some distant point. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "The Empire has not developed a new technology in 300 years. We perfect what exists. We maintain what works. We follow protocols established by our ancestors." She looked at Taman. "But we do not innovate. We do not experiment. We do not ask what if." "It's not entirely true," Taman said carefully. "Your quantum drives are incredibly efficient. Your shields are nearly perfect. You've achieved remarkable things that are now centuries old," Ishara countered. "While humans, who joined the Empire only 40 years ago with inferior technology, find solutions we cannot see." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Tomorrow, you will meet with me privately. I have questions. Many questions." The next day, Taman found himself in Ishara's personal study. It was a large room filled with artifacts from across the Empire. Ancient weapons, star charts, historical documents preserved in stasis fields. Ishara sat behind a massive desk made from a single piece of crystallized meteor. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a chair across from her. Taman sat nervously. Private meetings with the Queen were not normal, even for royal engineers. "I have been thinking about what you said," Ishara began. "About old methods and new solutions. About asking what if?" She leaned forward. "How do humans approach problems? What makes your thinking different from ours?" Taman struggled to answer. He had never thought about it analytically. "I suppose we're used to having limited resources. Humans have always had to improvise, to make do with what we have. We combine things that weren't meant to go together. We try things that might not work." "You accept failure," Ishara observed. "Failure is how we learn," Taman said. "Every failed experiment teaches us something. Valkyrie do not accept failure. Failure is weakness. Then how do you learn?" The question hung in the air. Ishara had no answer. Over the following weeks, these meetings became regular. Ishara would present Taman with problems, and they would discuss solutions. She began to understand how his mind worked. He did not see problems as obstacles to overcome with force. He saw them as puzzles to solve with creativity. One day, she showed him records of a recent battle. "We lost 17 ships here," she said, pointing to the tactical display. "The enemy used a new weapon we could not counter. Our strategists say we need heavier armor." Taman studied the data. "Heavier armor means slower ships. You'll lose mobility. Then what do you suggest? Don't fight their strength directly. Change the terms of engagement. If they have a weapon that penetrates armor, stop relying on armor. Use speed, deception, unpredictable movements. That is not how the Valkyrie fight. We face enemies directly, with honor." "Honor doesn't help dead soldiers," Taman said, then immediately regretted his bluntness. But Ashara did not seem angry. Instead, she looked thoughtful. "You are right. Pride has cost us victories. Perhaps it is time to reconsider old assumptions." Not everyone was happy with Taman's rising influence. Commander Juan, the leader of human auxiliary forces aboard the Crimson Talon, visited Taman one evening. Juan was older, in his 50s, with gray hair and worried eyes. "You're drawing too much attention," Juan said without preamble. "The Valkyrie commanders are talking. They don't like that the Queen favors a human." "I'm just doing my job," Taman protested. "You're challenging their entire worldview," Juan corrected. "You're making them question centuries of tradition. That's dangerous," he sighed. "I know you mean well, but be careful. The taller the tree, the harder the wind blows." Taman promised to be cautious, but he did not fully understand Juan's warning until the next week. He was working alone in the engineering bay late at night when General Voss approached. The military commander looked at Taman with barely concealed disgust. "The Queen has become obsessed with human methods," Voss said coldly. "She questions our military traditions. She suggests we abandon tactics that have served the Empire for millennia." He stepped closer. "This is your doing." "I only answer her questions," Taman said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You poison her mind with weakness. With cowardice disguised as innovation." Leaned down, his face close to Taman's. "If the Empire falls because we abandoned our strength, I will personally ensure you pay the price." He left without another word, leaving Taman shaken. That night, Taman met with Yuna in the human recreation area. He told her about Voss's threat. "You need to be more careful," Yuna agreed. "Half the ship loves you. The other half wants you dead. You're walking a very thin line." "I don't know what else to do," Taman admitted. "Should I stop helping? Give wrong answers?" "No," Yuna said firmly. "But maybe start thinking about the political consequences of your solutions. Every change you suggest threatens someone's position or challenges someone's beliefs." Before Taman could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. An announcement boomed over the speakers. "Battle stations. All personnel to battle stations. We are under attack." Taman and Yuna ran to the nearest viewing port. Outside, in the darkness of space, dozens of ships were emerging from quantum jumps. Enemy vessels, their weapons already charging. The Krill Collective had found them, and somehow, they had known exactly where to strike, as explosions began to rock the Crimson Talon. Taman realized that Voss had been right about one thing. Change was dangerous, but not in the way the general thought. The real danger was not in accepting new ideas. The real danger was in those who would rather see the Empire burn than watch it evolve. The battle had begun, and it was about to reveal just how deep the divisions ran aboard the Crimson Talon. The first explosion threw Taman against the wall. Emergency lights flickered as the ship's gravity systems struggled to maintain stability. Through the viewing port, he saw enemy ships surrounding the Crimson Talon like predators circling wounded prey. All non-essential personnel to evacuation stations," the automated voice announced. "This is not a drill." Yuna grabbed Taman's arm. "We need to go. Now." They ran through corridors filled with Russian crew members. Valkyrie warriors headed toward weapons stations. Engineers ran to damage control points. Everyone had a job to do during battle. Everyone except the auxiliary species like humans, who were considered too valuable to risk but too unimportant to fight. Commander, Juan was organizing the human evacuation when Taman and Yuna arrived. He looked older than usual, stress lines deep around his eyes. Get to Pod 7, he ordered, checking names off his list. Move quickly. We don't know how long the shields will hold. Taman stopped at the pod entrance. Through the walls, he could feel the ship shuddering from repeated impacts. Something was very wrong. The Crimson Talon was the most powerful warship in the fleet. It should not be taking this much damage so quickly. I need to get to the engineering bay, Taman said suddenly. Juan stared at him. Are you insane? Get in the pod. Something's wrong with the shields. They shouldn't be failing this fast. That's not your problem anymore. Get in the pod. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights went completely dark for 3 seconds before emergency power restored them. If the shields collapse completely, these evacuation pods won't matter, Taman argued. We'll all die anyway. Let me try to help. Juan grabbed Taman's shoulders. Listen to me carefully. If you stay, you will probably die. If you go, you will probably live. Choose life. Taman looked at Yuna. She was terrified, but she nodded slightly. He's right. You should check the shields. I'm coming with you, Yuna added before Taman could argue. No, Taman said firmly. You need to evacuate. I'm a linguist. I can monitor enemy communications. Maybe I can help predict their moves. Shh. She set her jaw stubbornly. We're a team. Shh. Juan looked between them, then sighed. You're both idiots. He turned to his deputy. Continue the evacuation. I'm going with them. Commander, you can't. That's an order. Juan pulled a plasma pistol from his belt. If they're going to do something stupid, they need protection. They fought their way through chaotic corridors to the engineering bay. Injured crew members were being carried to medical stations. Fire suppression systems sprayed foam on burning panels. The ship was dying around them. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Krall was shouting orders at his team. When he saw Taman, relief flashed across his face. The shields are failing, Krall said without preamble. We don't know why. Every backup system has been checked. Everything tests normal. But the shields keep weakening. Taman ran to the main diagnostic console. The readouts were confusing. The shields were receiving full power. The generators were operating perfectly, but the actual shield strength was down to 40% and dropping steadily. It's not a mechanical problem, Taman muttered, his fingers flying across the controls. Yuna had moved to a communications station and was listening to enemy transmissions. They're communicating in Krill battle code, she reported. But I'm catching fragments. They keep mentioning perfect timing and inside knowledge. The words triggered something in Taman's mind. He pulled up the shield control logs. Looking at the command history there, a series of micro-adjustments made to the shield harmonics 3 hours before the attack. Each adjustment was small, barely noticeable. But together they had created a resonance weakness. The same kind of weakness Taman had exploited during his trial. It's sabotage, Taman said aloud. Someone altered the shield frequencies from inside the ship.
Ow!
Went pale. That's impossible. Only senior engineers have access to those controls. Check who made these adjustments. Taman pointed at the TIMSTAMPS. Krall pulled up the authorization codes. His hand started shaking. These codes belong to General Cross? Who is General Cross? Taman asked. The Queen's cousin. Second in command of the entire fleet. Krall looked like he might be sick. If he's betrayed us, the implications were staggering. This was not just an external attack. There was a coup happening simultaneously. An explosion rocked the bay, larger than all the others. One of the Valkyrie engineers screamed as a console exploded next to him. Juan pulled the injured engineer away from the flames. We need to fix the shields now, Juan shouted, or we're all dead in the next 10 minutes. Taman's mind raced. The shield harmonics had been deliberately corrupted. He could reset them to default settings, but that would take 20 minutes. They did not have 20 minutes unless he took a shortcut. I need you to trust me, Taman said to Krall. I'm going to do something that violates every safety protocol. More than usual? Kral asked grimly. Much more? Taman began entering commands that made the other engineers gasp. He was manually overriding safety limiters. He was pushing the shield generators beyond their rated capacity. He was essentially making the shields stronger by making them unstable. You'll burn out the generators, one engineer protested. Better than being dead. Taman shot back. The shields surged back to 70% strength. The Crimson Talon stopped shaking as badly. But Taman knew this was temporary. The generators would fail within an hour. He had bought them time, nothing more. Where's the Queen? Taman asked. The bridge, Kral replied. But we've lost communication. General Cross's forces have seized control of that section. The coup was already underway. Cross had sabotaged the shields, invited the Krill to attack, and was now trying to take the ship from within. It was a carefully planned betrayal. Commander Juan checked his weapon. Then we need to reach the bridge and warn her. That's suicide, Kral said. Cross has elite guards with him. Do we have a choice? Juan looked around the bay. If Cross succeeds, he'll kill everyone loyal to Ashara. That includes most of us in this room. Yuna had been listening to the communications. The Krill are preparing for a final assault. They're charging some kind of weapon. A big one. Taman pulled up the external sensors. A massive Krill ship was positioning itself directly ahead of the Crimson Talon. Energy readings were spiking off the charts. Whatever weapon they were preparing would tear through even reinforced shields. They had perhaps 15 minutes before that weapon fired. Taman made a decision. Kral, you and your team work on permanent shield repairs. Yuna, monitor the Krill and warn us if anything changes. Commander Juan and I will go to the bridge. Can't fight elite guards, Yuna protested. Not going to fight them, Taman said. I'm going to talk to them. Juan laughed bitterly. Talk to them while they're committing treason. They're following Cross because they believe in Velkari's superiority and tradition, Taman explained. Cross has probably told them that Ashara has become weak, corrupted by lesser species, that she's betraying everything the Empire stands for. That's exactly what they believe, Kral confirmed. Then I'll give them proof that they're wrong, Taman said. I'll show them that working together makes the Empire stronger, not weaker. How? Juan demanded. Taman turned to the quantum drive controls. By doing something impossible? Again, what Taman planned was insane. The quantum drive that powered the ship could theoretically be overloaded to create an electromagnetic pulse, a controlled burst that would disable every ship in the area. Friend and enemy alike. But the control and precision required were beyond anything the drive was designed for. The energy levels had to be perfect. The timing had to be exact. One mistake and the drive would explode, taking the entire ship with it. I can do this, Taman said, though he was not sure he believed it himself. But I need someone to manually regulate the cascade from inside the reaction chamber. The engineers went silent. The reaction chamber was heavily shielded for a reason. The radiation inside during an overload would be lethal within seconds. I'll do it, Juan said immediately. Commander, no, Taman started. I'm 53 years old, Juan interrupted. You're 25. You have a future. I've already lived mine, he smiled sadly. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't blow up the ship with your crazy ideas. Taman wanted to argue, but explosions outside were getting closer. The Krill weapon was almost charged. They were out of time. You're a good kid, Taman, Juan said, heading toward the reaction chamber. Make sure our people remember that humans didn't run when things got hard. The chamber door sealed behind Juan with a heavy thunk. Through the reinforced window, Taman could see him taking position at the manual controls. Taman's hands shook as he began the overload sequence. Around him, the engineering bay fell silent. Everyone watched the displays, knowing what was about to happen. Charging quantum cores, Taman announced. Beginning cascade in 30 seconds. Through the window, Juan gave him a thumbs up, a human gesture that most Velkari did not understand. But Taman understood. It meant courage. It meant sacrifice. It meant that sometimes you did the hard thing because it was right. 15 seconds? Yuna's voice cracked over the communicator. Krill weapon is firing. Impact in 40 seconds. They would not make it. The Krill weapon would hit before the pulse could disable it, unless Taman fired early. Unless he took an even bigger risk. Initiating cascade now, Taman said. Press the final command. The Crimson Talon's quantum drive screamed as power surged beyond all safe limits. Reality itself seemed to bend around the ship. Then, with a flash that lit up space like a newborn star, the electromagnetic pulse exploded outward. Every ship in the area went dark. Valkyrie vessels. Krill attackers, the massive weapon mid-fire. Everything stopped. Everything except the Crimson Talon, because Taman had built a restart sequence into his overload. The ship's systems flickered back online 5 seconds later. 5 seconds was all they needed. The Krill weapon, disabled mid-charge, exploded harmlessly. Enemy ships drifted powerless. Cross's forces, dependent on electronic systems, were suddenly helpless. The coup had failed. The battle was won. But in the reaction chamber, visible through the window, Commander Juan collapsed to the floor. The radiation had done its work. The medical team reached Commander Juan within minutes, but everyone knew it was too late. Radiation exposure at those levels was not survivable, not even with Valkyrie medical technology. Juan was conscious when they pulled him from the chamber, but barely. His skin was already showing the terrible burns that came from being inside an overloading. Quantum reactor. Taman knelt beside the stretcher as the medics worked frantically. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This is my fault." Juan managed a weak smile. "Don't be stupid. I volunteered." He coughed and blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. "You saved everyone. The Krill are disabled. Cross's coup failed. You did good. You're the one who saved everyone," Timon said, tears streaming down his face. "We did it together." Juan's voice was getting weaker. "That's the point, isn't it? Humans alone are weak. Valkyrie alone are rigid. But together," he trailed off, his eyes closing. "Commander." Taman shook his shoulder gently. But Juan was gone. The medic stepped back respectfully. One of them, a young Valkyrie female, placed her hand on Taman's shoulder. "He died with honor. His sacrifice will be remembered." Taman wanted to scream that honor did not matter, that Juan should still be alive. But he swallowed his grief. There was still work to do. Queen Ashara had retaken the bridge with her loyal guards. General Cross and his conspirators were in custody. The ship systems were slowly coming back online. And outside, the disabled Krill ships drifted hell. Plesley Ashara summoned Temin to the bridge. When he arrived, still covered in soot and dried blood from the battle, she was standing at the command throne looking out at the stars. The bridge crew worked quietly around her, repairing damaged stations. "Commander Juan's sacrifice saved this ship," Ishara said without turning around. "He will be honored as a warrior of the Empire." "He wasn't a warrior," Taman said quietly. "He was a logistics officer. He managed supply chains and personnel schedules. He never wanted to fight, and he will be honored for his courage," Ishara corrected. "For choosing to protect others when he could have fled?" She finally turned to face Taman. For the first time since he had met her, the queen looked tired. Her scales were dulled from stress, and her amber eyes held a weight that had not been there before. "General Cross has confessed," she said. "He believed I had betrayed the Empire by listening to humans, by questioning our traditions, by suggesting we change our ways." She paused. "He had supporters. Many supporters. Senior commanders who agreed that the Empire was growing weak under my rule." "You're not weak," Temin said. "I allowed an internal rebellion to happen. I failed to see the signs." Ishara looked out at the disabled Krill ships again. "But Cross was also wrong. His rigid thinking would have destroyed us. The Krill knew our tactics too well. They had counters for every traditional strategy. Only by doing something unexpected did we survive." The officer approached nervously. "Your Majesty, the Krill commander, is requesting communication." Ishara's expression hardened. "Prepare weapons. Once our systems are fully restored, we will destroy their disabled ships." "Wait," Taman said before he could stop himself. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at him. A human engineer did not interrupt the queen during military decisions, But Ishara did not rebuke him. Speak. The Krill are disabled, helpless. If you destroy them now, you prove them right about the Valkyrie, that you only respect strength and show no mercy. Taman chose his words carefully. But if you offer to talk, you show something the Krill have never seen. Wisdom instead of pride. They attacked us, one of the commanders growled. Because Cross invited them, Taman countered. He promised them we would be vulnerable. He manipulated them into attacking during the coup. Ishara considered this. You suggest we negotiate with enemies who tried to kill us? I suggest you talk to people who might not have to be enemies, Taman said. The Krill Collective rebelled because they were oppressed. They fight because they have no other choice. Maybe it's time to give them a choice. The bridge was silent. What Taman suggested went against everything the Valkyrie believed. Enemies were to be crushed, not negotiated with. Rebels were to be punished, not understood. But Ishara had learned to see beyond tradition. Open a channel to the Krill commander, she ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Krill commander. The Krill were insectoid beings with compound eyes and chitinous armor. They looked nothing like Valkyrie or humans. The commander's translator made their clicking speech understandable. Right. You have one, Queen Ishara. We await your final attack. I am not calling to threaten, Ishara said. I am calling to talk. The Krill commander's antennae twitched in what might have been surprise. Talk. The Valkyrie. Do not talk with rebels. Perhaps it is time we started, Ishara replied. This battle was costly for both of us. My ship is damaged. Yours is disabled. We could continue fighting until one of us is destroyed. Or we could discuss why we are fighting in the first place. Krill fight for freedom from Valkyrie oppression. And the Valkyrie fight to maintain an empire built over thousands of years. Ishara glanced at Taman briefly. But I am learning that maintaining something does not always mean keeping it exactly the same. Empires can evolve. The conversation continued for over an hour. Taman did not understand all of it. The politics were complex, involving generations of grievances and conflicts. But he understood the core of what was happening. Two enemies were actually listening to each other for the first time. It did not solve everything. Wars were not ended in single conversations. But it was a beginning. When the channel finally closed, Ishara looked exhausted. I have agreed to formal negotiations in 3 weeks. Representatives from both sides will meet on neutral ground. If any of you believe this is weakness, speak now. No one spoke. They had all seen what Taman's weakness had accomplished. Creative thinking had saved them when strength had failed. Weeks passed. The Crimson Talon underwent repairs at a military station. Funerals were held for those who had died in the battle. Commander Juan was honored with full military ceremony, his name added to the ship's memorial wall alongside Valkyrie warriors. Yuna found Taman standing before that wall one evening. He would have liked this, she said softly. Being remembered as a hero, he was always a hero, Taman replied. He spent 40 years protecting human interests in an empire that barely noticed we existed. He made sure our people had good assignments and fair treatment. That's heroic too. They stood in silence for a while. Then Yuna asked, what happens now? After everything that's happened, Taman did not know. But the next day, he received his answer. Queen Ishara summoned him to her private study. When he arrived, he found her looking at his personnel file on a datapad. Lee Taman, age 25, maintenance engineer, 3rd class. She set down the pad. Those classifications no longer fit. I am promoting you to Royal Chief Engineer. Taman's eyes went wide. Your Majesty, I cannot accept that. Chief Engineer Krail has recommended you himself, Ishara interrupted. He says you understand things he has spent a lifetime studying. And more importantly, you are not afraid to question assumptions. She stood and walked to her window overlooking the stars. The Empire is changing, Taman. The events aboard this ship have shown me that change is necessary. Cross and his followers represented the old way of thinking. They nearly destroyed us. She turned back to him. I need people who can help the Empire evolve. People who see possibilities instead of just problems. People who understand that different perspectives make us stronger. I don't know if I can do that, Taman admitted. You have already done it, Ishara said. But I have one condition for your new position. You must establish an academy. A place where beings from all species in the Empire can study together. Where Valkyrie can learn human innovation and humans can learn Valkyrie discipline. Where everyone can share knowledge freely. Taman felt his heart race. It was an incredible opportunity. And a massive responsibility. Accept, he said. 6 months later, the Imperial Engineering Academy opened its doors. The facility was built on a neutral station, accessible to all species. The first class consisted of 300 students, Valkyrie, humans, Krill, and beings from a dozen other species. On the first day, Taman stood before his assembled students in the main workshop. They looked at him curiously, some with respect, others with skepticism. A human teaching Valkyrie? A former maintenance worker leading an Imperial Academy. Taman picked up a piece of damaged armor from a workbench. It was similar to Queen Ashara's ancient armor, marked with cracks and stress fractures. This armor has been broken and repaired hundreds of times over thousands of years, he explained, holding it up for everyone to see. Each time it broke, someone fixed it, and each repair made it different. Each repair added something new, a different technique, a different material, a different perspective. He walked among the students as he spoke. Some people think that makes the armor weaker. That original is always better. But they are wrong. This armor is stronger now than when it was first made, because it has been touched by hundreds of different hands. It has been fixed using methods from dozens of different cultures. It has adapted. He placed the armor back on the workbench. That is what we are building here. Not perfection. Something better than perfection. We are building adaptability. The willingness to break old patterns and repair them with new ideas. The courage to ask, what if, instead of accepting what is. He looked at each student in turn. Come from different worlds, different species, different ways of thinking. Some of you were enemies a year ago, but here you are all engineers, all problem solvers, all people willing to learn. He smiled slightly. Let's see what impossible things we can build together. The students began their work, dividing into mixed groups, as Taman had instructed. Valkyrie worked beside humans. Krill collaborated with species they had fought against for decades. It was awkward at first, communication difficult, cultural differences causing friction, but slowly. As they focused on solving problems together, the barriers began to break down. From the observation gallery above the workshop, Queen Ashara watched the students work. She touched the repaired section of her armor, which she still wore into battle. The repair was invisible now, seamlessly integrated with the ancient metal, but she knew it was there. A reminder that sometimes the smallest person could fix what empires could not. Beside her, Uno was documenting the Academy's opening for historical records. Do you think this will work? She asked. Can different species really learn to work together? Ishara watched as a Valkyrie student helped a human student lift a heavy component. She watched as a Krill demonstrated a welding technique to a fascinated group of mixed species.